Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. Be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. Let's get into the news and the notes and the movers and the shakers. I was listening to a national show today, for whatever that's worth, and somebody started throwing out this idea that maybe the 49ers might take Trey Lance third overall. And I said, somebody mentioned that before. It was you. Mike, we sticking to that? We still think the Niners are going to do that deal and get Lance at number 3?
Well, until they make that pick, I just soon ride that horse until it throws me.
Yeah.
I trust who told me that. I don't know who wins the battle here, but that guy is, let me just say, he's pretty connected to John Lynch.
Okay.
And that's where he got it from. Now, there's going to be debate, I'm sure, because of Kyle's history of being with more of the pocket-style passer. But I think, you understand we are in the final stages of that, where you're going to have some movement skills. And I think the quarterback of all 5 of the top ones that has the most potential is Trey Lance.
Why?
Man, all I got on him is 1 year and 1 game. The 1 year kind of take your breath away. This is a guy that I still don't know how he didn't get recruited harder. His dad was a small college player, but played in the NFL, played in the CFL, played for the London Monarchs in the NFL Europe. He got coached by my neighbor, Joe Clark. So there's some genetics there with him, and you see him on the hoof. Man, he is smart with his throws. He's accurate. He's mechanically very sound. He's got the footwork, mobility skills to get away from heavy traffic. Again, there's a learning curve for him. North Dakota State opponents, and the NFL is a little different. But, man, he's got what I would look for. And I get it with Trevor and with Zach. My big concern for both of them is how they can withstand getting hit. I mean, there's a reason why you pick in 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lousy offensive and defensive lines. The 49ers are a different story, where the offensive line is pretty good. They got a really good running game. They got receivers out wide that can help you in Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. You got an all-pro tight end, George Kittle. You got a lot of injuries last year. And you have a bridge quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo that can get you through 2021.
Sure.
And that I don't have to play Trey necessarily. And so, man, I look at Trey and see his skill set and say, wow, he's got some skills. And people say, well, he didn't play that great against Central Arkansas. And he didn't. I thought he pressed a little bit in that game. He knew it was 1 and out for him. It was one game, a money game, and they were out. My thing about it, how many people, were you doing sports talk when LSU played Texas Tech in the bowl game?
Oh, yeah.
How many people told you Patrick Mahomes is going to be the best player in the National Football League? Ain't a one. Nobody. No, listen, Charlie and I went through pregame, and he asked me about Mahomes, and I was like, man, all I know is he came to the Manning camp, and I didn't see the passes. I heard them. I mean, it sounded like a rocket had been fired off of there. So you could see he had immense physical ability. I'm amazed at how quickly he has processed this league and being able to get it. And he gets it at the highest level. And I think Trey has some similarities in that, that big arm, that ability to work out of traffic. He can throw the football in a lot of different ways, and it's sort of funky, It's not always over the top. It's sometimes sidearm. It's sometimes sort of three-quarter delivery. Man, it comes out of there sometimes not like you would do it picture perfect, but it gets there. And if you press him, he does not panic under pressure. But if you press him and he sees an open field, you better catch him and catch him fast, man, look the rushing yards he had at that redshirt freshman year. I mean, okay, so you can say, you know what, I'm tired of playing coverage on him because he's eating us alive. Let's put pressure on him. Okay. And he was like, okay, throw me that. Okay, come out, and he takes off running. And he makes big yardage. So for me, when I look at it and where he could land, and if it's a team like San Francisco with a lot of talent around him and an offensive line that can protect him, man, I didn't hit the gold mine, Jack. I didn't want it here if I go to San Francisco. I've also heard from a number of people in this league that say, hey, if San Francisco does go Mac Jones, which a lot of people in the NFL don't believe,
okay,
but their deal is, okay, if Mac Jones gets picked at 3, watch the cavalcade of teams that are going to try to get to 4 to pick him. Because I think it's going 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks.
Okay.
And now does Terry Fontenot say, okay, listen, boss, I know we need defense, but we're never going to be in this spot again, picking 4th. And we may get a signature guy here at quarterback. Let's go with Trey here. And we've seen teams eat the contracts of older quarterbacks before. So this offseason. And what happens with Matt Ryan in 2022. So there's a lot of variables with all that, but I believe what this guy told me at that moment in time, and he has been really good as far as 49ers stuff. And he told me, Mike, I'm telling you, he really believes that Lynch, who he had a conversation with, had mentioned how much he thought of Trey Lance as a player. But you know what? If I'm the 49ers, I don't have to tell you nothing. I'll keep you guessing. You know, hey, listen, this is poker for me. And whatever you want to do, you can do. But if I can get a team to blink maybe a little bit and say, you know what, man, I'd like to get to 3. This is what I'm willing to offer you. You know, man, Lynch has done that before. Yeah, he conned the Bears to move up 1 spot for Trubisky, didn't he? 1 spot. And he there was no way he was picking Trubisky. And he conned people into believing that. The same people that get on internet and, man, they don't leak information. Okay, who leaked that to the Bears that they were going to pick Trubisky? Why would the Bears trade up 1 slot to pick Mitchell Trubisky? Because the 49ers got that to the right source at the right time, and they suckered them, dude. I mean, big time into that move when they had no inkling to pick Trubisky. So aren't we sort of following the same rabbit hole again with this? And who leaked this out about Mac Jones? People say, well, the 49ers don't leak information. Well, who leaked it out about Mac?
The Saints have added some offensive line depth. They re-signed Will Clapp. They also signed a free agent out of Tulane. And last week they signed Jalen McCleskey, another former Tulane receiver who handled that, worked out at that pro day. I'd love any opinion you have on adding the interior line depth and adding another receiver here in this free agent period.
Well, it's part of, I think, you want to be ready in case you have an injury. It's not when, it's just eventually. So you want to take a look at some of that offensive line depth, especially in the interior, which you can get today, and I think for a pretty good price. I think the interesting part of this draft is that one of the areas of real strength, and you don't see it every year, and it's one of the best I've seen in the last maybe 6 or 7, is the talent level across the board along the offensive line, at tackle, guard, and center. Some years you get a lot of numbers maybe at guard and not so much at tackle, and sometimes it's vice versa. This year, it's pretty good across the board. And I wouldn't be surprised if Saints use an early round pick on an offensive tackle.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, it's kind of part of it. And Sean has sort of hinted at that a little bit. But you can get interior people. You know, Clapp's been on the team a while. He's been, and also served as that blocking tight end like Streif used to do. So you know, this is the time of year you looking for guys that you think might be able to help your football team, and especially some versatility. And that's where if you can get a tackle that can also play guard, that, man, really, really helps your football team. Jalen, man, I go back a long way. I saw him at St. Paul's. I know his dad, JJ, really well. Man, he's a blur. Man, he can run. And he's a very good route runner. He's not a real big guy. So you understand he's a smallish receiver. And so he's going to have to make it on special teams and also make a big splash in training camp and also in the preseason games, which hopefully got played.
Right.
So, I've seen him play a lot at Oklahoma State, certainly at Tulane. Smallish receiver, great speed. Sometimes his adjustment skills to the ball, he could better that. But, man, I can't teach him to be fast, and that he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's a lot faster than his pop. I told JJ that. He's a lot faster than you. He's got a shot there, especially I think that one of the things you will see this year, and people always tell me, Jameis Winston's got to adjust to Sean Payton's system. I disagree with that. I think as good as Sean is, he knows that he's got to adjust part of what he does offensively to Jameis Winston's skill set as a player. And one of the things he can do is throw the ball deep downfield. Now, listen, Father Time and the man upstairs took that away from Drew in the last few years. But now you got a guy that can whip it downfield. Man, I want me a deep threat guy. I want me a guy that can run and get downfield and make a big play. Years ago, I would have been a little bit afraid to, hit that big play and then have my lousy defense come right back on the field. But that's not the case today.
Yeah.
Saints defense is pretty doggone good. So I do think that element, Matt, is maybe we haven't talked about it as much, but I do think that will come into play, that Sean's play calling and his play design will adjust to Jameis Winston and what he can do best. Listen, he's done that before, hadn't he?
Sure.
Okay, when Drew went down and he had Teddy Bridgewater, he adjusted to what Teddy could do best. He's adjusted to what Taysom Hill can do best. He's going to adjust to what Jameis does best. And Jameis can flame throw it downfield, that long medium pass and the deeper ball. So I'm interested in this draft, how they come out of it wide receiver-wise. Because it's a thick draft wide receiver-wise like it was a year ago. Do I get that guy that can really stretch the field? Because now I get that safety out the box. He can't walk up into the box now. He's got to play me deep. And I throw one of those deep passes, and the Saints used to do that when Drew never was the power thrower, but he would throw a deep ball just to get that safety off when he had Devery and Robert Meacham.
Sure.
Early in the day. But now, again, he had to adjust to what Drew could do best at the end. Now he's going to adjust his offensive scheme to Jameis Winston. And I think that's adding a big play element speed-wise.
Mike, now I know in your mock draft you have the Saints taking a receiver, but there's been a lot of talk about if the Saints, and you and I have this conversation every year, Mike, best available versus need, and I know your answer every year. But is this something where they may look at 28 at a receiver if the right guy's there? And who might that right guy be?
Well, I told you that before. I almost turned it in with Elijah Moore. I basically handed the printer mock draft because all four corners are gone. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah Owusu is gone, and Zaven Collins is gone. I pulled it back from him. I redid it. And everybody sees is Greg Newsome II from Northwestern, the corner.
Yeah.
So, but my original thought was, man, it's all wiped out. Let's go with a receiver because I thought he was the best player up on the board. And it would not shock me at that point if they went that way. One thing I think in the first round, you have spent so much time, money, effort scouting. Do I want to reach for a guy who I've got on my board? Yeah, he's the 5th best corner, but he's the 38th best player. Or I have a receiver who's the 25th or 26th best player, and I can get him at 28.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've spent all that time, all that money, all that effort into this, and that's where I'm going to go. The biggest mistakes you can make is reaching for a position. Even though you need that corner, and they desperately need it. I don't know if there's anything thinner than paper, maybe air is, but man, it's air thin. at cornerback.
Yeah.
And linebacker, other than Demario Davis, you don't really know anything about the other guys. Nothing. So you would hope that a player either at linebacker or corner is still there. But you can run through a scenario like I did to have those linebackers going, to have the four corners going. Now what do? Now you can do one of two things. You can trade back. It has not been what they've done often.
Sure.
They did it in 2006. They traded out early in round 2, and they got Jeff Fain and Roman Harper out of that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Man, Jeff hit the lottery because he went to Tampa. Man, he cashed in. He was the highest paid center in the NFL when he went to Tampa. So I wouldn't surprise me there, because if I want to get that corner, I can move out a few slots and pick me that guy a little bit later. Or do I pick my best player? And that player may well be a receiver at that particular point in time. And I think in a thick draft at receiver, like we've seen in the past, those receivers sort of last a little bit longer. If you redid last year's draft, Chase Claypool don't last into round 2.
Sure.
Not the guy that the Steelers got. He ain't lasting that long. So you get it. And so it's going to be what happens at 28. And everybody says, well, trade up. Okay, if I'm in the teens, why would I want to trade back to 28? Unless you make me a great deal. Man, because I've spent most of my time looking at players from that 15 to 20 mark. Now, all of a sudden, I drop all the way down to 28. You better give me a bundle back in return.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying Sean wouldn't do that for a particular player, but in this draft class and in this year, with a lot of veteran players that you've had to sort of get rid of because of the salary cap, wouldn't you want more picks in this draft? Because somebody's got to fill those slots. You don't have the money to go out and get a veteran to fill every position out there. You're going to have to go with some younger players. I think that's the one thing on this roster that will change from the last few years. It'll be a younger team, because financially you're not going to be able to keep a veteran guy at every position.
Mike, could I argue the depth of receiver in this draft is more of a reason to take a receiver later, because you're more likely to land a guy, second,
Yep.
third round?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree on that completely. Now, here's the thing. You can say, okay, if I got a guy that the coach loves a lot, talk him out of not picking that receiver.
Sure, I get that.
Because it's tough at that point. Coaches don't like to admit it, but they fall in love with a player. They do fall in love with a certain player. And the Saints traded up for Brandon Cooks. Remember that deal? They kind of moved up in the draft and got Brandon at that particular point. So we've seen Sean do that, and receivers are plentiful. Last year was the best receiver class I ever did. But this year's class is really good, too. The difference is I thought last year's group of receivers had more speed to it. This year's class has more size and length. So, and get used to it. And what really is different this year than last year in the last couple years? Tight end. I mean, you look at that list of tight ends, it's lengthier than I've seen in a long time of really good tight ends. And I think that's going to continue, Matt, because most of these guys who are that 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and they're not playing on defense no more, and I put them at flex tight end. You look at Cole Taylor and how he's built, or a guy like Arik Gilbert. Would he be playing tight end 15 years ago?
There ain't no shot, man.
He's playing
defensive end, yeah. He's
defensive end or an outside linebacker rushing. That's the big difference today. These guys today, man, defense, what? Man, I don't know nothing about no defense. All I want to do is catch the ball. That's where 7-on-7 has changed everything. Everybody wants to be a receiver or that flex tight end. And I think you're getting a better grade of receiver today, a better grade of tight end today than 10 years ago. And I think it's helped the quarterbacking situation, where you get a more refined product, a guy that has played, God, in these 7-on-7 things, how many games have you up to? I mean, it is kind of a skeleton drill, but it is kind of one-on-one too. And I think it helps that quarterback with throws and timing and everything else. So we living in a different world. You ain't living in Papa's world no more.
LSU Spring football in the books. What did we learn? Anything?
As advertised, bad to the bone up front, defensive line. And some of those guys were out.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, you saw it. And it's been what always preached, I guess, since early January about this defensive line. And, yeah, it is what it is. Man, if you can get pressure breaks the pipe. And they got it. Now, I was really impressed with their secondary. And McLaughlin really played well.
Yeah.
You know, man, he stood out. And so, man, I'm glad for him. He's a tall, rangy guy, lengthy. Man, his ability to put that foot in the dirt and get to the ball, really, really impressive. Offensive-wise, the quarterbacks sort of had their deals working with the ones. They look good. This ain't no breaking news, but Keyshawn Butte can play. I mean, you know, that's not the hot off the wire press deal. But how about John Trey Kirkland? Man, I saw him play so much at Letcher, and he played for my cousin Tim and also played for Dwayne. They're a terrific football player, and he found his niche. And, I'm just so happy for him that he's gotten this opportunity. And I've always felt an offensive player and a guy that could play that slot, and he can give you a lot of trouble when he gets the ball in his hands. So just looking at it, defensive line play, I thought they got a lot of good pressure. Secondary was certainly improved from what we saw, and the communication part was good. But, man, they were tight with receivers. The disappointment was you didn't see much separation from the other guys at receiver. Man, they were stuck to them like glue. That tells me one thing. They got a couple of freshmen that are going to see playing time in 2021. And, you know, the running backs, just because of the injuries, you didn't get to see that. But, you know, it is what it is. Max and Miles, I thought, really played well in the game. They threw the football well with the ones. Struggled without the ones.
Right.
So it is what it is. And, you know, listen, I've always felt Miles is the guy to beat out. But, you know, Max is breathing down his neck pretty good.
Did you see anything specifically from either of those guys, Mike? 'Cause of course, there's always the fascination with the quarterback and quarterback play. And the spring game is just one day out of 15 practices. But do we feel like we know anything more about either of those guys coming out of spring?
Not really. Here's my deal. Why is LSU fans bitching about quarterback? Isn't this what we have always wanted to see? To have talented quarterbacks at LSU?
Right.
And, man, everywhere you go, they got people complaining about it. Man, you know, it's Max, it's Miles. You know, they should give TJ more time. Man, Garrett Nussmeier's the guy. Man, okay, I get all that. But here's my thing. For years, you were hoping to get that type of quarterback depth at LSU. Now you got it, and you're still complaining. It reminds me of a lady on the bayou. She was one of the early Powerball winners, and she ended up with like $11 million. And so she was great with that. That was fine. But she had a neighbor that was complaining that the week before the Powerball winner won like $100 million. You know, my thing is, okay, you won $11 million. And you complaining that somebody won $100 million? Okay, that might run through your mind, but then they're handing you a check for $11 million, and you ain't done nothing but put $10 on it. Oh man! But that's the world we live in today. It's never satisfying with that. Even the year where Joe I had people. They would, you know, come on, they got to pull Joe out of these games and give Miles some time to play. What? When are they going to pull him? Alabama? Come on. Be real with this. So, Matt, I think if you look at it now, Hank Stram told me this many years ago when he worked with us at one of the casinos. So he would say, Bayou, let me tell you something. I never complain about having too much. I always complain about not having enough. And so that sort of feels it at LSU. Here you got four guys competing. Now, Garrett's different than the other guys. I mean, it's obvious that he doesn't have that size of the other three. Man, but he can roll around that pocket pretty well, and that ball comes out all kind of different ways. He's an interesting player, but again, Miles and Max will take this to the final week of practice. They'll take this before O gives you an answer on the starting quarterback situation.
Mike, what about the offensive line this spring?
Yeah, it was okay. I didn't see nothing that was whoop-de-doo, as far as I'm concerned. But it was okay. That's all I can say. I thought the first unit offensive line, I thought played pretty well. But, man, you got to develop depth. And what's concerning to me is when those 5 leave, who's going to take their place? Now, I know Bradford's going to be one of them, and I know Charles Turner's going to be the other one, either at center or tackle. But, who's going to fill in the other spots? And it's, to me, the biggest build area for the fall and then for 2022 is what you're going to do offensive line-wise. Because, I just look at it across the board in college football. If it's Alabama, if it's Clemson, Ohio State, what do they have every year? They got talent and they got depth along the offensive line. And that's why they are cut above. It's not at wide receiver. It's not at running back. It's not in the secondary. No, it's what they got up front, offensive, defensive line. Now, you got it defensive line-wise. Now you got to rebuild that thing and build it to where you have constantly getting that guy. And I sent this to Coach last year. I did a study on what positions have the most injuries. Tackles was 1, guards 2. Eventually, that second-string tackle or guard, he's going to have to play because of an injury. So I just thought offensive line play was okay at best.
Mm-hmm. Mike Detillier is with us. He's on Twitter at Mike Detillier, Saintsport.com, MikeDetillier.com. Mike, we'll get to our listener questions in the next segment. One more as I skip back to the draft, though, that I wanted to ask you before we get to listener questions, which is at the top of this draft, as we talked about, if 5 quarterbacks go in round 1, and then all the offensive players, right? The 2 offensive tackles, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Kyle Pitts. Theoretically, are we going to see an elite defensive player? Shouldn't we see, just math, an elite defensive player fall in this draft and maybe be there for the Saints at 28?
It's possible. Now, here's the thing.
Okay.
Every draft has a different journey. This is the first draft I can remember. Is there an elite pass rusher in this group?
That's a great point, Mike. I mean,
in the interior or on the edge? Now, I will say this. If Jalen Phillips was completely healthy, I would have no issue with that. But the story on Jalen is most highly recruited football player defensive line-wise in America. Goes to UCLA, just starting to hit his stride, 3 straight concussions, quits football, gets a second evaluation where they give him the clearance to play, goes to Miami last season. I thought he really played well. 10 years ago, people would have said, concussion? Spell me that.
Right.
Man, I ain't worried about no guy with concussions. Today, it's a different story. And I think he's one of the 3 players. I'll be interested to see how medicals get involved. And he's 1. Caleb Farley, the cornerback from Virginia Tech, is 2. Landon Dickerson, center guard from Alabama, is 3. Man, Landon Dickerson, man, he's a terrific football player. But his injury list is as thick as War and Peace, the novel, the Russian version of it. I mean, it is thick, Jack. Caleb Farley coming off of a back injury. But Micah Parsons, you can make an argument, is an elite player. He was not necessarily always used as a pass rusher. He ran the field, and he can play inside and off the edge. So I think it's a dead heat between Micah Parsons and Patrick Surtain on who gets picked first defensively. And then I think you will start to see it sort of build after that. Then a J.C. Horn. Somebody's going to pull the trigger on Kwity Paye from Michigan because he can rush the quarterback along with Jalen. How far this goes with it, though, because, man, there are some good receivers here, some good offensive linemen in that bunch, and it could well be, Matt, what you're saying. It pushes that guy back. But be watchful of a medical guy dropping, because I've seen this. It's 36 years for me, so it's a long ride.
Okay. That
those type players sort of take a little bit of a ride down. And so Phillips, Farley are the guys to watch, that they could tumble farther than what we think because of that medical. Because, one team, I don't feel good with it. Let's pass on him. The other team, well, man, so-and-so needed a corner. They passed on Farley. We're going to pass on him too. Let's go with Greg Newsome. And then need a pass rusher. Let's go with Ojolari from Georgia instead of Phillips because of the concussion. And all of a sudden now, those guys start moving, and they move down. And it could well be what you're talking about, Matt. Could well be.
Mike, let's start with a one-off from Elliot, who keeps saying, Mike, name the car that you had that would say the most about you in your life.
Jesus. Ellie's trying to catch me in a statute of limitations deal, but it didn't long pass. Okay. I had a 1971 Chevy Nova.
All right.
It was a hand-me-down from my brother. He bought a new car late 1977, so he gave it to me. So I had it for a little while, and my brother, he wouldn't mind me saying it. He was square, dude. He didn't do nothing.
Okay.
He didn't drink. He was no coordinator, supervisor, didn't smoke, nothing. No doobie, nothing in that car. I thought I worked for Acadian Ambulance the first month I had that Nova because I had to put the paddles to that Nova twice. That poor Nova didn't know what was going on. Man, they had some coordinating and supervising going on in that car, big time. And I think about it today. No, he would be a designated driver today. He would be good at that. He's 5 years older than me. But here's my deal. They probably got 5 people. I would say 5, maybe 6. Prominent people in this world. They don't want that Nova talking about them neither.
I think I might be able to name a few of them.
But all I can say is, man, that Nova, after the first month, she got over, what was happening there, and she rode me wherever I wanted to go. It looked bad. It was gold. Gold. I guess that's what they called it back then, gold color. But, man, it was a lousy-looking car. But that thing had 4 wheels and an engine, and it rode me everywhere. And I'm just telling you, to answer Elliot's question, it would be that one.
I got you, Dad.
And we'd be having some serious conversations at this point in time, along with some others about what was happening in that car.
Ask Mike. Matt King says, ask Mike, what happened to Cardell Thomas? Is he not progressing?
Man, Cardell had some injuries, and it's never been the same. Never been the same since the injuries. And so, man, all I know is I've heard Coach talk about Cardell at times, but he's talked much more about Anthony Bradford.
Oh, yeah.
And all I know is if Anthony can keep his weight down, man, he's got a chance to be a really good player at LSU. But Cardell, it certainly looks as though the injuries have taken away some of that from him.
Bronson says, ask Mike, how many players got a first-round grade for this year's draft?
24.
Oh, wow. So by your account, the Saints would be reaching for a player at 28.
Well, it happens every year. I think last year I had 22.
Wow. First-round
pick guys, and then from 23 to like 36. I mean, it was all jammed in there. But it's like that every year.
Okay.
It's really like that every year.
Kirk says, ask Mike, do you see the Saints going after a corner this draft or a linebacker?
Yeah, I think both. Come on, just look at that roster. The roster tells you cornerback and linebacker are 1A, 1B, for needs on this football team. So, yeah, cornerback and linebacker would be, to me, the two. If you're talking about needs, they are needs.
Jeremy Stout asked Mike, LSU football, over under 9 wins.
Oh, man, if you had asked me today, I would go with 9.
Yeah.
I think that's what it looks like today. And my big thing is starting off fast. If you can go and take care of business against UCLA, and you got a little bit of time to kind of get that team together, build up a little bit of confidence, especially on defense, because I think they're going to move the football. No matter who's at quarterback, they're going to move it. Mm-hmm. Big question mark is, how will you be able to slow everybody down? And can that pass rush be the big difference this year? We saw it in spurts last year. Can it be consistent?
Let's see. A couple more here from Mike Detillier. Chris Clavin asked Mike, are the Bengals going to get ridiculed no matter who they pick, if it's a lineman or Jamar Chase?
Come back with that one more time. I missed the first part.
Said, are the Bengals going to get ridiculed no matter who they pick, if it's a lineman or Jamar Chase?
Yeah, I think they will no matter what, but I think they go Penei Sewell here. I think, again, you got to talk to Joe and say, hey, listen, man, I'd love to have Jamar team up with you. But you got to understand, we got to keep you upright. You're the franchise. You what we building around. And if I'm Cincinnati, I seriously think about using the first 2 picks on linemen. I've got to be able to help him, last. And he was so beat up. He was like a piñata last year. Every game he's getting hit and hit and hit. And don't give me this stuff about Riley Reef. Man, I heard one of these national guys, they got Riley Reef. They don't need Penei Sewell. Riley Reef, he's 33 years old. He's been an above-average starting player. Come on, he ain't changing that offensive line. You need folks there. And so, yeah, I think they're going to catch ridicule because what'll happen, Jamar goes to Miami or something like that, and he catches 80 passes and 10 of them are touchdowns. And, okay, Penei Sewell, man, we could have had him. So no matter what, you're going to get ridiculed, but you got to go lineman.
Last one for you. We got about 20 seconds. Would Sam Ehlinger be a good fit at pick 105 for the Saints if Trask and Book are off the board?
No, I'd pick him later.
All right, Mike Detillier, saintsreport.com, MikeDetillier.com, and, of course, the M&D Draft Report. Draft night, 1 week from tonight. We'll look forward to talking to you then, as always. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Matthew.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.